Suspect who terrorized Minnesota's political leaders after deadly shooting found crawling in rural field. Vance Bolter, 57, had three semi-automatic rifles and two handguns, one in pieces, when he murdered a state lawmaker and her husband, authorities said. The suspect wanted in the slaying of Minnesota's lawmaker and her husband, as well as in the injury shooting of a state senator and his wife, was found Sunday night armed and crawling in a field in a sparsely populated stretch of Minnesota, authorities said. Minnesota's Governor Tim Walz announced Vance Bolter's capture at a news conference after saying Saturday that the suspect's alleged crimes included a political motivated assassination. Despite being armed, authorities said Bolter was taken into custody without incident and no injuries were reported. Bolter is in custody and has been charged in connection with the murders and the attempted murders. Drew Evans, superintendent of the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, said at the news conference. Evans added that his team was in contact with the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office, who he said was examining whether to bring their own additional charges. Nearly 200 law enforcement officers, including members of 20 regional and local SWAT teams, descended on Eastern and Sibley County, about an hour outside of Minneapolis, started Sunday morning. However, the suspect may have taken advantage of rural terrain to remain hidden most of the day, authorities said. Police Chief Martin Bruley of the Brooklyn Police Department said it was, without a doubt, the biggest manhunt in the state's history. The governor expressed relief that the suspect had been apprehended after collaboration from federal, state, and local law enforcement, including when Minnesota State Patrol officers put their handcuffs on him. Sleepless nights. After a 2-day manhunt, 2 sleepless nights, law enforcement had apprehended the alleged shooter, Wall said. This cannot be the norm. It cannot be the way that we deal with our political differences, he added. Authorities alleged Bolter tried to kill State Senator John Hoffman, a Democrat, and his wife, Yvette, at their home in Chaplin at roughly 2 a.m. Saturday before fatally shooting State Representative Melissa Hortman, a 55-year-old Democrat, and her husband, Mark, in nearby Brooklyn Park. In a statement released by the Hoffman family, Yvette Hoffman thanked law enforcement for capturing the suspect. John and I are both incredibly lucky to be alive, the statement read. We continue our healing journey and are humbled by the outpouring of love and support our family has received from across the state and our nation. Authorities said Bolter left behind a notebook with a hit list of other politicians as well as those who have been vocal in support of abortion rights. The names include those of Hoffman and Hortman. Near the top said Democratic Party Executive Ron Harris, a fellow Minnesotan. Evans said the list also included politicians based on Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan, Nebraska, and Iowa. Bolter emerged as a suspect at police covered locations familiar to him and spoke to people associated with the married 57-year-old. The hunt was jolted into renewed action about 6:30 a.m. Sunday when his car and cowboy hat were found not far from his residence in Green Isle in the eastern portion of Sibley County, authorities said. A Bill Regal associated with the suspect, as well as his cowboy hat, found at the side of the road in a wooden area about 3 miles from the residence, drew a massive manhunt, authorities said. Tense 10 hours, but the trail seemed to get cold. Though nightfall, as there was no sign of the suspect for more than 10 hours, despite evidence he had spoken to people while on the run. Evan, the criminal apprehension superintendent, said at a news conference earlier today, Bolter remained somewhat of a mystery even as authorities spoke to his wife and relatives after a Sunday traffic stop, during which they cooperated fully with investigators, Evans said. There was no evidence, he said, that the suspect had ever previously threatened the lawmakers he shot or anyone else on that list. Warrants for his arrest included a state warrant alleging he committed second-degree murder and a federal warrant alleging he was was on the run to avoid prosecution. It wasn't clear if the suspect had a lawyer. Bolton impersonated law enforcement to get close to the lawmakers at their suburban Twin Cities home before opening fire, officials said. Brooklyn Park, Minnesota police conducted a welfare check at the Holtman's residence and encountered a man in front they believe is Bolton, dressed as a police officer with a police-style SUV emergency lights on in the driveway, Brooklyn Park Police Chief Mark Brewley said on Saturday. It was apparent the home had taken fire before the officers arrived. He said that when the suspect realized police had arrived, he opened fire and exchanged rounds with them before fleeing through the home and escaping out back, he said. No other injuries were reported, but inside that home was the slain couple, authorities said. A statement of probable cause filed in support of charges reflecting the state warrant stated the suspect was seen on security video earlier at Hoffman's home shortly after 2 a.m., representing himself at the door as a police officer and wearing a mask over his face and using a Ford SUV that had the appearance of a marked patrol vehicle. The couple's daughter was not struck and called 911. While cited his daughter, Hope, as he spoke Sunday night, calling her actions heroic. Authorities said they found 3 semi-automatic rifles and 2 9mm handguns in the abandoned SUV. Also inside, they said, was the notebook with the alleged hit list. At the news conference, Evans said a local police officer reported seeing a man running into the woods, and authorities, including SWAT teams and the state public safety helicopter, overheard rushed the area. They called for the suspect to surrender and capture him as he crawled through a field, he said. Detectives were interviewing the suspect overnight, Evans said. In the video circulating online, the suspect describes himself as a married father of 5 from Green Isle who works for 2 funeral homes. He said he had previously worked for 3 decades in the food industry and once traveled to the Democratic Republic of Congo to partner with farmers and fishermen to help them stimulate their food supply system. A deep impact on Minnesota. Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar said Yvette Hoffman was well enough to text updates, including that her husband has had to undergo multiple operations since the shooting. She said 9 rounds struck him and 8 others hit her. She said the state senator is closer every hour to being out of the woods, according to Klobuchar. Later, Wall said Hoffman emerged from the last of many immediate operations he needed and was recovering. Wall said the shooting will have a deep impact on Minnesota politics, with the loss of Hoffman presenting a double-edged sword of political violence and the loss of a leader who he strives as ardently effective and compromising. Melissa Hoffman was the core of who our values were. The governor said, it's not about hatred, it's not about mean tweets, it's not about demeaning someone, it's leading with grace and compassion and vision and compromise and decency that was taken from us.